Hey, it's Sam here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about different exercise splits, as this is an issue that's come up and I haven't discussed it at length yet. So we're going to cover first the main different types of split that there are, the different kind of subgenres of them, different people that use them under different circumstances, a few pros and cons of each, and then how you'd apply or choose a particular split for your situation, or how I tend to advise people. Now, because we're focused on bodybuilding, this is going to be exercise splits that cover the whole body more or less. If it's something more sports specific, you might actually have a kind of routine or split that's not the whole body. But with the whole physique thing and general gym culture, it's going to be a thing that more or less covers the whole body, but prioritizes different areas depending on where weak points are, the trainee's lifestyle, and all sorts of factors like that. Now, the main kinds of split that there are whole body routines, upper and lower body, body part splits, and then combinations that are often known as push-pull legs. Now, in the old days, it was all like whole body. They used to train like 3 days a week, but non-consecutive days, so perhaps Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Always whole body, but that was kind of before as many exercises were introduced, and they didn't want to do so much variety like within each muscle group, so it was felt that it could be covered within a whole body exercise. That's still sometimes applicable today, but that's how that's kind of set up. Upper lower obviously is like upper body, like chest, back, shoulders, arms, the abdominals, lower back, and then the lower body stuff like glutes, hamstrings, quadriceps, calves. And that's kind of usually deployed like upper lower as a 4-day kind of split in a week. Or if someone was prioritizing just the lower body, it might be 2 lower body days, 1 upper body day. In fact, for women, it's sometimes like a blend between a whole body system and a kind of lower body dominant thing. So it may be 2 lower body days, 1 upper, and that's the split. Or it's 3 whole body days, but all 3 of those days are more focused on like lower body with things like squats and hip thrusts. Once you start looking at stuff like push, pull, and legs, these are usually where muscles tend to work together in the kind of movements that we do are then exercised in the same day because they're warmed up and working anyway. So like in that system, it's push, where you're doing things like the pectorals, the deltoids, the triceps as well, because they're going to be used anyway in the compound exercises that you did for chest and for shoulders. And on the pull day, it's usually like the back, the trapezius, the traps, and biceps, because you would have got elbow flexion in the compound exercises for back anyway. And these are kind of like working together. In that system, you kind of sometimes a subgenre of that is having kind of 2 different types of push day, 2 different types of pull day, and 2 types of leg day. So sometimes you'll call it like push A and push B, pull A and pull B. And what really that means is that in the 2 push days, one of the push days will be a little bit more focused on the chest perhaps, the other one a little bit more focused on the shoulders. So all of the exercises you wanted to include like over a week or over a 10-day cycle can't really be put every single time, would be considered loading it too much. So they just kind of like alternate between which is prioritized. So you might have, you know, incline pressing and weighted dips like in push A, and then in push B you might have like flat bench pressing and like military pressing, but you not have all 4 or all 5 of those exercises on both of the push days, just for example. Just to explain that again, for on the leg days, so you might have leg A and leg B. It's very common for one of those days to be hamstring focused and have things like your seated leg curls, Romanian deadlifts, and all of that sort of thing. And then one of the days to be more quadriceps focused. And also with back, perhaps one day is more devoted to the kind of width exercises, which are more working from the latissimus dorsi, and then another day based on more the thickness or a density day, and it's more the heavy rowing with your T-bar rows, barbell rows, cable rows, and such like. And that's one way of doing it, and that's, you know, often if you're going to do 6 days a week and both push, both pull, and both legs all in 1 week, that would be considered like a high volume system. Another high volume system where you're not doing one body part per session would be like the old school, like 1970s golden era kind of antagonist split. This is a little bit different to push-pull legs. It could be the same volume, but in the antagonist system, you're working on a completely opposite principle to this thing of, oh, the triceps are warm anyway from the push day, so you're doing them at the end. You're kind of doing the opposite of that, where the idea is that you want to do like everything fresh and have its own day in a way. So in that system, it was chest and back together, opposing muscle groups in a sense. Shoulders, biceps and triceps together, so shoulders and arms day, and then a leg day where hamstrings and quadriceps kind of work in opposition and are used together. And that was called like the antagonist split. And the high volume way of doing that was to do chest and back, shoulders and arms, legs as days 1, 2 and 3, and then repeat that with days 4, 5 and 6 in a whole weekly system. So you've got kind of different splits, but they also can sometimes go hand in hand with whether it's going to be high volume or lower volume. But really, they can all work. The advice that I usually would give people is determine first what you can actually stick to consistently for a number of times you're going to train in a week, say, or if your calendar works a little bit, schedule calendar works a little bit differently, perhaps it's not going to be considered a week, but can baseline like how much you're going to be training and how that's going to work. And then it'll go hand in hand with that more naturally. So if someone said to me they can train 1 or 2 days a week, my suggestion would be to do whole body. Possibly, if it was 2 days a week, it would be upper and lower. Once someone gets into between 3 days a week and 6 days a week, you then pretty much got any choice between like a push-pull legs, an antagonist system, or a body part split. We hadn't mentioned that one yet, but basically a body part split is when you have one or maybe 2 muscle groups like per day. So it might be day 1 chest, day 2 back, day 3 shoulders, day 4 legs, day 5 arms, and then it repeats the system. Or sometimes it'll be blended a little bit, like it could be day 1 chest and shoulders, day 2 arms, day 3 legs, day 4 back, but that's kind of called a body part split. But you'll sometimes hear that get called a bro split, and that was almost, well, it's kind of a disparaging thing, but it's become a little bit of a standing joke to call it a bro split, because it's very commonly done by hobbyist gym users, people that would get called bros. But I think it's unfair to kind of talk down on it in that way, because actually a lot of pro and high level bodybuilders would use a body part split or a bro split. It's not like it doesn't work, and I'm kind of using something similar to that at the moment. Now, when it comes between choosing a different split, if someone's going to work like 3 or 4 days plus per week, really it should be guided by where their strengths and weaknesses lie in their strength and development, and what's worked for them in the past and what hasn't suited them in the past. So if someone was kind of lacking in the legs, then perhaps they would have 2 leg days, but the other days would be like a body part split or blended together. Say someone had a particularly strong back and they had particularly strong biceps, perhaps they could do back and biceps together, chest separate, shoulders separate, and 2 leg days, and that would be like a kind of body part split. And there's other ways of mixing this up. So sometimes people will do, I've known a pro bodybuilders in fact that will do days 1, 2, 3 push-pull legs, day off, and then upper body and then lower body, focusing on the more key exercises, then the next day off, and that's a week. So there are no rules to this. You can do this in whatever way you're going to prioritize things that need the most work. And for a lot of us, that's legs. For some of us, it's kind of different parts of the body, like, just individual weaknesses, because everyone finds once they get training that there's certain areas that come up faster than the rest, and others that are lacking and need more attention and perhaps need to be trained on their own. So if someone doesn't have that much connection with their chest, the pectorals, they'd maybe want a chest day on its own, but perhaps shoulders and arms could be done together if they were like overpowering the chest in the development of their physique, and the split could be set up around that idea. But whatever you're going to do, it's good to be able to baseline it because it's something more clear and consistent that you're able to measure results against. So just like the diet, you'd have it set and baselined so that you know what's happening for a week, and then week by week you can measure results in terms of body measurements, measure skin fold calipers, the strength progression, self-report of how the trainee feels, and then make adjustments from there depending on what's appropriate or whether they feel like happy with this or overtrained or anything like that. But really, you don't need to worry about overtraining until it happens. A lot of people are over scared of overtraining, and nothing really bad happens. Like if you're overtrained, it's not like syphilis or something, you know, or even in terms of your muscles, it's not like, you know, your muscles shrink to nothing like a cold scrotum and won't come back for months and months. You'll just feel overtired, maybe need to take a couple of rest days and have a rethink and re-baseline to something more reasonable. So you might have been training 6 days a week. You can knock it back to 4, say, you know, your priority was chest, that gets its own day. Maybe you don't have a separate arm day because that was getting along just fine, and it goes sort of chest, shoulders, arms, back, and legs, and that's your 4-day split, and you're not working 6 days anymore because you're a little bit run down and tired. But that's how you like would adjust things, a practical example there. But it's always about just making it work. So, you know, even this video, I'm trying to make it work by doing a little bit of last minute meal prepping for my last 2 meals of the day while I'm talking to you here. And you gotta just look at the results and see how you're getting on, because all of these splits work. I'm not a sort of pro or anti any of them. It depends on the situation and what the trainee can commit to, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they can cope with, all that sort of thing, and dealing with the situation and the best split for the individual. So we all work differently and have different stronger or weaker points. So in my mind, there's no point everyone being on the same cookie cutter exercise schedule, doing the same plan. It's really got to be relative to how good their recovery is. And on that point of overtraining, just like your strength and your endurance can improve, your ability to recover can improve as you get more and more trained. You know, if someone worked as, say, a blacksmith, they'd be using their muscles like every day in exactly the same way, and they don't sort of, you know, their CNS is fried because they're like overtrained and they're going to die. They just get used to it and go from there. So when people sort of say about like these high volume routines like the 70s antagonist split, they're sort of out of fashion now. But they work just as well now as they ever did in the past. And actually, one of the first splits that I did when I was serious was the one from the Arnold's Encyclopedia, where it is chest and back, shoulders and arms, legs, repeat the next 3 days. And I got terrific strength and gains out of it. It was brilliant. I never worried about overtraining. It just kind of really got going. And it was only really when I started deadlifting heavy and doing pull-ups more and stuff that I decided to split chest and back, because they're separate days and wouldn't do them together. But I could still do 6 days a week in the gym and be doing shoulders and arms together and full leg days. So I adjusted that myself, but I started with something quite high volume after I built up to it. So when I very first started training, I did whole body for 2 days a week. Then I did 3 days a week push-pull legs because I'd seen that, and then I jumped straight from that to the 6. Well, sort of gradually. I did 4 or 5 days and did 2 days of the stuff that needed more work as I got more used to it. Then I was doing the 6 after a few weeks, and it's amazing what you're capable of. Usually we underestimate rather than overestimate what we're capable of in terms of workload. So any of these can work, and I think often the driving factor is nothing more than like the time available and the person's schedule and what needs prioritizing more than other parts. And I enjoy all of these different splits, but the reason I'm doing what they call a bro split at the moment is because I feel that for my height and my structure, my arms and legs are kind of lagging, so they need their own days and can't really be put with anything else. And then the kind of weight I'd be hauling for chest or back kind of needs its own day. So I was doing like a body part split and doing legs twice a week, and then I recently adjusted that because I was finding that my knees were getting achy from doing like really heavy hack squats twice a week, and that wasn't sustainable, and I needed to take a little bit of time off from legs to come back from that. And I would reapproach it by doing all of legs on one day per week and then keeping everything else separate, and I've ended up in this kind of bro split basically, and it's working okay for now, but nothing will work forever because your body just gets used to it and you reach the next plateau and have to have a rethink. But as long as you know what you're doing was baselined, it gives you something to adjust up against. And I've always enjoyed chopping and changing things, because even as well as the progress and measuring everything that you're doing, you need to keep engaged with all this stuff to stay consistent. And sometimes swapping around your exercises or your split or what you're doing, or even the gym that you're using, can keep things fresh for you and be a real kind of like psychological stimulus to keep you engaged, because really this is all very quite repetitious work and takes longer periods of time, and anything that can help keep you consistent is very helpful. So that doesn't mean continually change your split or just make it up as you go along, but there can be an argument for changing things just to keep you engaged and keep you fresh, and that makes it easier to train harder because you haven't kind of got into this spinning your wheels and going through the motions thing that can be more common when you've been doing exactly the same thing for a while and stuck in a rut and need a bit of a shake-up. I come back over here while that's cooking. Basically, I've switched over from the chicken breast to the chicken thigh because it's a little bit more fat content and a bit more energy for me, but also the way that they lay out in the air fryer, they don't need cutting in half, so they're even quicker to prep. So that's a switch that I've made on the nutrition side. But with these splits, as you know now, there are loads of different options and approaches, and they would have their benefits depending on your situation and your weak points and your level of experience. But actually, I think they're not the most important thing to focus on, like the perfect split, because it depends on the individual, as we've covered. But I think there are more important factors, and those more important factors would be the level of effort, the consistency, and choosing like the harder, more productive exercises to focus on. And that can happen within any kind of like system of split, you know. So if you're changing things or the split suits you, it's going to be easier for you to work hard consistently. But within the split, the choices of exercises for the body parts that you're doing in that split, please don't shy away from the more hardcore exercises. You should be looking to make things more challenging by switching over to more of them rather than coming away from them. I know that sometimes people, when left to their own devices, will shy away from certain exercises and have all sorts of excuses or want to switch different things, and often behind it, I suspect, is that they're avoiding the one that's more painful and more difficult. But what tends to go hand in hand with the exercise being more painful, strenuous and difficult is more productive, more gains. So to my mind, within the split, the more hardcore exercises are overhead pressing with dumbbells and barbells, bench pressing with dumbbells and barbells, deadlifting, barbell rowing, T-bar rowing, squats, hack squats, leg presses, heavy and carefully, all of this sort of thing. When someone sort of slides over to too many machines, or not enough hard work with the tried and true exercise, pull-ups as well, weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, when all the ones that I've just described start fading like out of the system and install machines and all isolating things too much, it's perhaps getting a little bit too easy and needs to be made more challenging in terms of the exercise choices rather than rethinking for the perfect split. But the main thing is that hard work, consistency, baselining what you're doing, measuring results and adjusting to where changes need to be made, or seeking the guidance of someone with more experience that can do that with you. Because you've got to do what's right for you. As I say, it should be individualized, and I feel like a lot of these things, like what goes in and out of popularity, is just a cyclical thing of different trends. And so I feel like the most on-trend thing at the moment to be doing with your split, this kind of push A, push B, pull A and pull B, and legs A and legs B thing. I'm not saying anything bad about it at all. It's a great system. It makes perfect sense. It has a logic to it. I think the only flaw that I'd say that is applicable to some people is it might not be hitting arms enough when the trainee's fresh enough on arms, so it might be a disadvantage if arms are priority, but definitely if they're not, it's a great system. It keeps variety, and having 2 different sessions for each one that alternate, I think it's a great system, but I think it's always got to take priority what's best for the individual and their circumstances. So while that's kind of in vogue at the moment, in a few years it won't be, it'll be something else, and the main driver has got to be like what works for the consistency, hard work, and the strengths and weaknesses of the physique in each individual. So those are my final thoughts for today. I hope that makes sense. If you have any further questions about training splits or related topics that I've talked about today, just drop them in the comments. If you continue to enjoy the variety of my bodybuilding content, full workouts, gym tours, reviews of books, PED discussions, contest preps, the whole lot of it with bodybuilding, make sure that you subscribe, because it's going to continue to be a video every day. And I feel like tomorrow we'll be back in the gym, perhaps a gym tour. See you then.